Within Boudica's city, the walls of the grand palace whisper of war. Inside this palace, adorned with golden tapestries, intricate carvings, and the flickering glow of oil lamps, King Ogakan stared at his commander of armies, Lord Badri, standing before him. The king, draped in a flowing resplendent robe, threw a questioning look at Badri. Lord Badri, chest covered in an armor of polished bronze, face unreadable, stepped forward. His voice was calm, but his words carried a storm. "I have heard from a spy in the rebels' camp, my king," Badri said. He smiled and added, "Their lair is no longer hidden." Ogakan's eyes narrowed, deep as the midnight sea. "In exchange for the token he asked?" Badri nodded. King Ogakan rose, a grin breaking out on his face. "Who is this spy?" he asked. "Lord Matakadi's wife." "Ah, my former captain of the palace guards. Now he will see that he chose the wrong side." King Ogakan, gleeful and excited, shouted, "Take your soldiers, burn their shelters to the ground." Badri hesitated, his brow furrowed in worry. He had promised Lord Matakadi's wife a reprieve for tonight. The attack was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Ogakan glared. Badri tried to explain about the promise. The king shrieked in fury, incensed. Promise? He did not care for promises. "Strike tonight," he ordered. The commander of the king's armies walked out to marshal his men. The battle had been set. Surely, blood will be spilled before sunrise. Badri's mind was burdened with sadness. Shariah, his wife, dead, her unborn child lost with her. He never had time to grieve. King Ogakan's war took that from him. But grief was a luxury he could not afford. The rebels had to fall. And yet, doubts crept in. A name lingered in his mind. Zareh, he whispered into the darkness. Mysterious, untamed. Who was she truly? There was more at play here than he could see. And now, he would march into battle in the morning, against his own heart. And what of the rumors? The whispers hinted that the king had wronged her. Was it true? "What are you hiding, my king?" Badri muttered softly. His hands tightened around his sword hilt. Promises would be broken tonight. And he hated breaking promises. It was the peace before the storm. The dissidents had no clue that death was riding toward them. But just then, Matakadi entered his room, his warrior robes flowing. Suddenly, his gaze fell on it, in his wife's hands, the king's token. His breath stilled, his heart turned to stone. "Tell me you did not," he croaked. She could not. Her tears betrayed her. In the distance, the ground trembled. Hooves, drums, war. The army of Meramara was coming. Matakadi rushed off to sound the warning. The innocent began to flee into the bush. The warriors stayed, swords drawn, shields lifted. Badri's army arrived. War cries shook the air. Steel clanged against steel. A storm of death began. On a hill, destiny stood on the edge of a blade. Steel met steel. Sparks flew. Badri was strong, but Zare was swift as the wind. Blades clashed. Feet danced over stone and dust. Neither gave ground. Until Zare slipped, the edge crumbled. She fell. Quick as a flash, Badri lunged. His hand caught hers. For a breath, time stopped. He tugged. He saved her. Then he pulled her up into his arms. For a moment they breathed together. Zare, he whispered. In that moment, he confessed what he had always known deep down. A truth. Love. Badri stood silent, listening as Zare explained everything. The past unraveled like a forgotten scroll. She told him about the prophecy from the goddess Yahagi. Yahagi spoke of your coming, Badri said in a hushed tone. You're the last warrior queen? Zare nodded, solemn, and continued her story. For many years, she had lived amongst the half-beings. That had been the only life she'd known until she was 20 years old. She had been adopted into the home of a half-being couple. They had kept me alive, you see, she said to Badri, her eyes pools of sadness, because they needed a siren to lure sailors on passing ships. The half-beings raised her, molded her, used her. 16 years old, a siren, calling men to their doom. Ships came, men vanished, and the half-beings fed off the sailors. But one day, she fought back. She ran onto a ship, into another nightmare. That was the slave ship that brought you to Meramara. Badri shook his head, sorrow decorating his face. He kept listening, and he realized something. Zare was more than a rebel. She was destiny itself. Badri entered the dissidents' hideout, carrying sacks of food. Now, Badri was no longer the king's hound. He had become the rebel's blade in the shadows. But at home, his sole remaining wife, Turafa, watched him. She noticed the change. She felt the absence in his heart. And she remembered his earlier fascination with Zare. The king had heard whispers. Badri's loyalty was in question. King Ogakan stared into the eyes of his commander of armies, trying to uncover the truth. Have you been supplying the rebels with food or not? Ogakan's voice boomed. Ogakan was testing him. Badri decided to lie his way through the accusations until he learned who had betrayed him to the king. His wife, Turafa, was his accuser. "I don't believe you," Ogakan roared. Badri knew then that he had been found out. All was lost. "You are a vile tyrant," he yelled and punched the king in the face. Steel flashed. The guards seized him. Badri fell. He was shackled, defeated. Zare led the charge into the city, intent on rescuing Badri. Blades sliced, shields were shattered. Finally, she fought through the soldiers and guards, blocking her way into the prison. She found Badri bloodied and manacled and set him free. Together they stormed the palace. The palace guards came at them. Badri and Zare quickly dispatched them. Then eventually, she found the king, Ogakan, hiding like a rat in the inner bedroom in his own palace. She raised her sword. At last, she would have justice. Zare glared at him, smirking. The fat king, sweating and trembling, fell on his knees, begging. "Your reign is over, king," she snarled, and took a step forward. And with one stroke, the tyrant fell. Screams, blood, shadows moving in the night. The half-beings, creatures of nightmare, have descended upon the city. For years they waited. For years, on multiple occasions, the half-beings had smelled the blood from across the river Njabi. But on those occasions, the smell of blood had soon faded away. Now, for the first time, the smell of human blood remained. From across the river Njabi, the stench of war had broken the spell, keeping the half-beings on their island. They swept all over the kingdom of Meramara, an evil flood, feeding on any human in their path. Still could not stop them. Fire only amused them. They were death made flesh. The half-beings have taken over Meramara. They feasted, they devoured. The city had fallen to madness. But there was one hope, a weapon forged by the goddess Yahagi, the only thing that can end this nightmare, the axe of Shangan.